With all our heart, we praise and thank Thee for this beautiful Saturday morning, for us to learn once again from a prestigious speaker. We thank the Father for giving him knowledge, wisdom, and experiences for us to learn as entrepreneurs. And we ask Thee to please bless all of us, that we will be open-minded and that we'll be able to get ideas and also solutions on how are we going to improve our businesses, as well as how to improve our lives. We pray to bless our speaker, that he would be able to impart his knowledge and he would be guided on the right things to say to us through the guidance of the Spirit. We pray to bless all of us, that this meeting would be meaningful and successful. All these things we humbly pray. We ask in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks a lot, Brenda, for that beautiful prayer. Brothers and sisters, we would like to welcome all of you to this very special webinar. Truth be told, this is a dream come true for me. As you know, the Academy in the Philippines has been running the longest in all the places that we have been operating the Academy. 20 years, more than 20 years now. And so those who have started in the Academy, those who have graduated in the first batches, those who have started their businesses, probably already have kids who are teenagers and they're now being involved in the businesses and all that. And so we have been having a lot of our graduates coming to me asking, James, we are now ready for the second generation. They're now being involved and it's now a family business and it's exciting for them, but it's scary for them as well. And so we're so happy. I'm so happy that I received an email from Kim Gibson, our Chief Impact Officer, and introduced me to Mark Morris, our speaker today. And when I read about his background, and I got so excited, and I asked Mark if he can talk about the basics of running and growing family businesses. And so, brothers and sisters, I know you will have tons of questions, please do type them on the Q&A box. Okay, there's a Q&A box right there below our Zoom platform screen. Those of you who are listening to us on Facebook Live, please type them on the chat, on the comment boxes, and we have regional coordinators who are making notes of your questions. You can actually text or message your regional coordinators or me, so we can ask your burning questions, and we will have Mark answer them after his presentation. That's it. I am happy that you have read about him through the posters that we have distributed. Now it's time for us to hear from him. So ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, without further ado, I give the full screen now to our speaker today, Mark Morris. Mark, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that kind introduction, and it's such a pleasure to be with everyone. I'm so honored to have an opportunity to talk to you and to share. I hope some of the things that I share is of benefit. I appreciate that wonderful, kind prayer, and also the opportunity just to be inspired by your wonderful stories. As I've learned a little more about the Academy, I've been able to share that with family and friends, and to share with them about many of your stories and your successes, which are inspirational. And so I support you from afar with thoughts and prayers and hopes that you will continue to be successful and continue to inspire others and future generations. I'm going to share my screen here and hopefully be able to take us through a few things as I talk. I hope these things will be helpful. Since we wanted to talk, I was told we wanted to talk a little about family businesses, and I'll tell you a little about my background to just get started. So I'm married, I have 6 children, and I've been working in industry for about 2 decades. And I come from an entrepreneurial family. And so, my dad and his dad and cousins and coaches and other mentors were business people. They had small businesses. Some did things like constructions. Others did things like food or retail. My dad, he did some things with construction, and that's kind of the background I have. One of my earliest memories is of me riding on a truck, a dump truck, where I would go out with my dad early in the morning, and he would sometimes let me shift the gears as we rode, and those are really fond and tender memories for me because my dad passed away about 10 years ago, and so as one of the things that I thought of as I was thinking about what to prepare today, I was thinking about some of my conversations with him about his business and how it was important that we had some conversations when I was younger to help set us up to have a good relationship when I was older. I've also been an owner operator. Had to make payroll and had to get on my knees and pray for things to happen so that we could be blessed, which has included for our family. We've tried to highlight when God has blessed us, which is all the time. But there's some specific times where things were tight and tough, and we fasted and prayed and paid our tithing, and all of a sudden the windows of heaven opened. And there's specific examples that we've shared with our family of how one day there was no money and no opportunity. The next day there was, and so I'm constantly in awe about how good God is and how He constantly blesses us and our family. Um, so when I wanted to get an education, my dad, he said, "Hey, I don't want you to actually stay in the family business. I want you to go out and do something so that you can not stay with us." And part of that actually was because in our business there was some tragedy. My grandfather, who I never actually got to meet, died doing the work that my dad did. And so for my dad, the work was scary, and he said he'd much rather me be safe and earn a different type of living than to stay in the family business, which was interesting. And so I went and got an education. I went to BYU, focused on marketing communications, and then when I went back to get an MBA, one of the things I actually wrote in my letters of application was to say, "Hey, I really want to work with people like my dad. I feel like the things that business teaches you, the principles, they can help you be successful, and more people should know them." And so one of the benefits I was looking for from going to more school was to have an opportunity to learn and to share these principles, so that similar to the principle of gravity, either know that principle and it can benefit you, or you can walk off a cliff. And so I wanted to strive to help more businesses not walk off a cliff. And that's kind of why I ended up going back to school. And part of the reason why I am teaching now at BYU Idaho is because I really like sharing the things that I've learned, and particularly in a one-on-one environment, and seeing it have an impact on people in a positive way. Um, I've had lots of different experiences with lots of different industries, from airline to digital to mobile, to software and hardware to logistics, and working with farmers and fruit growers, and working with distributors of automobiles or insurance, working with the NBA, and working with restaurants and others. So lots of different opportunities. In this discussion, I'm actually going to focus on the things that are circled, because those that this model here really is, I've experienced a lot of interactions with families and some of their struggles as they've looked to grow their businesses and understand how to manage the future as they honor the past. And that is a constant theme that I've seen, whether it's been with these distributors like the Toyota dealers that I've worked with in the past, or the farmers, or others, the franchisees that I've worked with. And so I feel like I have a great personal story because I come from this business that was built by family. That's my heritage, my roots. It's kind of what inspired me to seek more schooling, and it's something I've had lots of different experiences with that I hope to share with you as I continue our discussion today. The first thing I want to talk about is that family businesses have to fight to survive, and this is very common across industry, across nationality, across ethnicity and countries. That only about a certain percentage of family businesses actually survive after the first generation. So roughly 30%, and then additionally another 70% or so are taken out in the second generation, and that's a frightening thought. It's frightening for all those hours and work and sacrifice that the generation that built the business has gone into. It is nerve wracking. It is very concerning. And today I want to talk a little bit about why that is, and hopefully that and some of the things that we can maybe do about it, in sharing why that is, and hopefully what we can do about it. Maybe some things will come to you that can be a blessing to your life. So as I said, wealth often does not survive the third generation. Here's some reasons why. So competent successors, financial continuity, or being able to have enough financial resources to continue, having strategic challenges to the business. But the real, if we look at the statistics, they really fall on the last two. So having this kind of diverse or challenging family goals and perspectives, and not having an effective team, that is the lion's share of the reasons why these businesses don't survive. And the concerning thing about that is that there's a lot of control there. We can do a lot about that. We can do things to bring our goals in alignment and have a similar perspective. We can do more to build effective teams to prepare for success. But there's certain things that we need to kind of take into consideration in order to do that. And so I'm gonna go through some things that we need to really think about as we consider how a family business is different than a typical business. And because it's different, it has different things it has to work through and intentionally manage, as opposed to letting things just happen to it. And as we intentionally manage those things, we can see more success as we strive to overcome the failure rate. And so as we think about the family business system, the first thing I want to emphasize is family businesses are actually built differently. And so depending upon where you sit in this family system, you have a different perspective. I want to go through some of the ways a family business is different than a typical business. So like a typical business, you normally have owners. Like a typical business, you normally have the business itself and the people that work in the business. And note, with these two circles, you basically have three groups. You have the ownership group, which some businesses have owners that actually don't work in the business. You have the business group, so those might be your employees, it might be your managers, and then there's this overlap of owners and business people. So people that own the business and that also work in the business. That's the typical business configuration. And as you think about that, there are three groups here. When you add the family circle, the complexity actually more than doubles. And so now we have these outside owners, we have the employee owners that we talked about before, we have the employees, we have the family employees that are not owners, we have the family members that are not employees, they're not owners, they're not workers or managers in the business, they just are members of the family. We have the people that are members of the families but are also potential owners, and we have those family owner managers that are all in the middle. The academic classification of chaos is when complexity grows to a point where instead of being productive and having synergy and growth and productivity by having more, you actually have a decrease in production, a decrease in having success. And know that family business are built to have chaos. They don't have to have chaos, but they are built to have more chaos because they're built differently than the typical business. I want to pause here and just tell you a story. Sometimes we think of this group five as not having very much influence on the family, but in some places, in some families, in some businesses, in some cultures, that might represent a mom. It might represent a dad, a grandma. It could represent someone who married into the family business. And sometimes that person has more influence on what happens to the business than anyone else. Their influence matters. I remember an example with one of the companies that I work with, and the parent who didn't work in the business knew about one of the children that did work in the business who was really struggling to the point where they were actually doing some things that were could take down the business. Some of the things were not in line with the code or ethics for the business. Some of the things were maybe even potentially considered legal by the government. And that parent said to the family, take care of this person, said it to the brothers, said it to the sisters, said it to the other spouse that was in the family. And as the family talked about this person, they considered asking them to leave the business because of the turmoil they were causing with employees, with potential partners, with the law, etc. And that family member, even though they weren't a member of the family, said, no way. You cannot let that person, you can't fire them. You got to figure out how to work with them, but we will not let that person go out of our business. And regardless of the negative influence and the negative drag potentially that the person had on the business, they worked around those things. And I thought that was really interesting. And I can think of other examples that are similar where the person who isn't part of the family, isn't part of the business, isn't an owner, but just a member of the family has tremendous influence over the business, over the ownership group, and over the family. So again, the first principle is that they are built differently. The second principle that I want to share with you is that family businesses often have different goals. And so in this diagram, we have 4 different quadrants. And as you think about these, there is the financial dimensions of a family business, and then there are the family dimensions of the family business. And you could fall in one of 4 quadrants potentially. And on the left side with the financial dimensions, things can either go really well for you financially, so that's a positive, or things can go negative. And similarly with your family dimensions, things can go positively or negatively. Um, at, Ideally, we would all be in the warm hearts, deep pockets quadrant, which is on the upper right hand corner. Um, but some of us would say, if I couldn't have that, I would rather be in the warm hearts but empty pockets quadrant, which is in the bottom right hand corner. However, other members of your family might say, no, 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 I actually would rather be in the pain hearts but deep pockets quadrant of this diagram. And then, we probably none of us would like to be in the pained hearts, empty pockets quadrant, but sometimes we get there based on our choices, and I'll explain that a little later. But these quadrants, we need to think about. They have different goals, different priorities, different focus, and people in your family business might be focused on a different quadrant. And if for example, mom is focused on, hey, I'm okay with having empty pockets as long as we have warm hearts, and dad is focused on, well, I'm okay with having pained hearts as long as we have deep pockets, we have a big problem. Or if a child is focused on one or the other, we have a problem. And so understanding where people are focused in your family and why they're focused there really is critical to getting people on the same page. My question to you is, where are you? Where are you personally? But also, as you think about your family business, where are the other members of your family business? Uh, and when I ask you that question, I'm not asking where would you ideally like to be. I'm asking if push comes to shove and you had to trade off, because we'd all love to probably be in the warm hearts, deep pocket category. If you had to choose between another category, which one would you settle for? And that'd be an interesting conversation for you to have with your family. The next thing I want to talk about as a principle is many family businesses are set up for failure. Now, it's interesting to me that the thing that is designed, put together, and built to keep the family together, the business, to provide for it, to shelter it, to nourish it, to provide the clothing, the food, the warmth, to provide influence, to do good in society, that thing can often be the wedge that breaks up the family. Here's some quotes from Warren Buffett, who's one of the most wealthy men in the world, and also it's been reflected not only by him but other wealthy individuals like Bill Gates, who have made promises and made taken measures to not give leave their family a huge amount of wealth. They basically have said that might set them up for failure. I'll read this last one. You can read the ones these on your own, but I'll read this last one on people who complain about debilitating effects of welfare should recognize that they are creating a cycle of dependency by giving their own kids a lifetime supply and beyond of food stamps. So, at this time, this reminds me of a story. It reminds me of this parable that's told about a young man who had a really successful family business, and he came to his dad once and said, "Hey, Dad, when are you going to allow me to be able to be my own person and move forward in my own way?" And his dad said, "I tell you what, if you when you can bring me $1 million, I will consider you your own man, your own person, and I'll actually uh, recognize that you've become the person that I want you to become, and at that point, I'll give you more responsibility and allow you to have more access to the family business. And so he said, no problem. Went downstairs that day, went and talked to the person who's in charge of the money for the business. He said to him, yeah, you know who I am. You know who my dad is. Can you give me $1 million? And the guy said, okay. And he gave him $1 million. And the guy took that right upstairs. Probably within a couple of hours of talking to his dad, he said, "Dad, here you go." Now the dad had this fireplace in the office, and he took the $1 million, which the guy brought to him just kind of in his hand, and he just threw it in the fire. And the guy's like, "Whoa, why'd you do that, Dad?" And he's like, "No, no, son, you don't understand. You need to actually go and get the money yourself. You can't go down to the family's business to get the money." I was like, "Okay, Dad, I get it." And so he left, and he went to one of his family friends, who was also one of his dad's business partners. He said, "Hey, you know who I am? You know how much my family's worth? I need $1 million. Can you give that to me?" And the guy said, "No problem." And he gave him $1 million. And he said, "Hey, you probably shouldn't walk around town with that." And so the guy said, "Okay, do you have a paper bag?" And so he said, "Yeah, here's a paper bag." And so he put it in a paper bag. Came back the next day, said, "Hey, Dad, here you go." And his dad said, "Okay." And he opened the paper bag, and there was $1 million, and he threw it in the fireplace. It's like, "Dad, that was $1 million. Why'd you do that?" And the dad said, "No, son, you're not getting me. You need to earn the $1 million. You cannot go to a friend. You cannot go to a business. You actually have to earn the money yourself." And at that point, the son said, "Wait a minute. You mean I have to actually go and work for the money?" He's like, "Yes, you have to go and work for the money." He said, "Oh, Dad, that'll be so hard. It'll take so long." He's like, "I know." And with a big smile, he patted him on the back and sent him off. And so he started at the bottom, and he got a job, and he worked and found a partner and worked some more and put in long hours. And he'd see his dad every so often. Dad'd say, "Hey, how's it going, son?" He's like, "I'm working, Dad." He's like, "I understand." He kept going. Years later, he came to his dad's office, but this time he was different. He had the money, but it was in a briefcase. He had guards with him with the money. The money was tethered. There was a handcuffs that tied the money to him and his wrist. His bodyguards had armor, and they also had weapons to protect him. They secured the area as he entered the building, and he went upstairs, and he came to his dad, and he said, "Dad, today's the day. I have $1 million." Years later, with wrinkles and sweat and gray haired, a little older, a lot wiser, calloused hands, he came with the $1 million. And he was about to hand it over to his dad. But before he did, he saw that there was a fire in the fireplace, and he stood in front of the fireplace. A different person, because he earned it himself. And that's the principle that I think Warren Buffett is getting at here. At the very top of this slide, I have an egg, and in that egg is a chicken that's hopefully hatched. As you know, if you help a chicken hatch as it's struggling to push its way out of the shell, if you help it hatch, you set it up for failure. It cannot survive on its own. It has to struggle and peck and push and work its way through the egg on its own. Um, just on a personal note, I know in our family, our parents, they gave us every opportunity to succeed. But what it didn't mean is they didn't just give us handouts. They encouraged us to get education. We worked. I had a job. I was working as long as I can remember. Like I told you, one of my earliest memories is going on that truck with my dad. I remember, with my uncles painting or pulling out insulation with fiberglass that stuck to your skin and made you itch, or being on a roof. My sister, we worked our ways through college, and the fact that financially we are independent of our parents matters, because it removes the need to fight over money, because we have our own access to having capital, and our own access to creating that by our own sweat and labor and the things that we've done on our own. To be really clear, when I say on our own, I don't mean only on our own. I fully recognize that we stand on all those shoulders, whether it's my mom, my dad, my sister, standing on the shoulders of aunts or uncles, coaches, people that have invested in us. I fully recognize that. And so I'm not saying that we haven't had a ton of help from mentors that we can never actually repay. But part of why we strive to give back to society is because we are so grateful for the things that they've given to us. And we recognize that their hand and God's hand in our life. So I'm not saying on our own when I say that, but what I mean by that is that our success is not tied to the success of the family and the things that our parents have done. The next thing I want to, so one more thing, again, just one more emphasis, many family businesses are set up to fail. And therein lies the problem of this paradox of prosperity. The next thing I want to talk about is that really a family business is a kind of clash of two systems. And to illustrate that, in a normal business, most businesses are meritocracy. So it's by merit that you get and grow and succeed. As you do better, you have rewards and opportunities to progress in the business. You might start at the very bottom, but eventually you can work your way up to another level in the business and continue to work and to continue to have success. And you have a lot of control over how far you get to go in that business or in that industry. If, for example, the business says, hey, we can only promote you so far, you can move somewhere else and continue your progress and growth. However, the family is not like that. In the family system, whoever has the greatest need gets. And so to illustrate that, one of my children recently had jaw surgery, and then on top of the jaw surgery, she had to have braces. And whatever the cost of that jaw surgery and the braces for the kids who didn't have that, it would be ridiculous and absurd for one of them to come to us and say, well, you paid X or Y or Z for her jaw surgery and her braces. So can you give me that money for whatever I want to do? That's not how a family works. If there's someone that's sick or suffering, if there's someone who needs a surgery, if there's someone who needs a true need, not necessarily a want, but a true need, the family scripts and pulls together to meet that need. And so those systems come together and clash and collide when it comes to a family business. In some ways, it's hard to differentiate between, hey, are you talking to dad, or you're talking to mom, or are you talking to your boss? Or, sometimes dad or mom might work for son or daughter. And so who am I talking to right now? That's really hard to kind of delineate. And those things make it really hard for a family business to have some success. Um, the, the, the next principle I want to emphasize is that family businesses have different types of conflict. And you have this type of conflict in all businesses, but because of that last slide, the emotion that a family business has, and I'll step back and I'll talk about this one more time. One of my colleagues shared a story with me about a family business that he was working with, and in the family business that this example goes with, during the conversation, the person who was working with them, their advisor, because they knew they had problems and things to work through. That day, he said, "We're going to have a tough conversation," and he actually arrived with some gear on. He had on the gear for being an umpire in a game. So he had on an umpire mask, and he had on an umpire vest, which is padded, and the sleeves that protect you from being hit by the ball. He said, "Hey, I'm prepared because we're going to have a tough conversation today." And with this family member, they had a long kind of history of setting rules, and then that family member, a specific family member, breaking rules. Them setting rules and breaking rules, and these rules specifically had to do with things that they spent money for. They'd set a budget, and then the family member would go over the budget. And they went back and forth around why they shouldn't do that, and how that affects the family, and how that hurts the family, and how it's a break and a breach of trust. And the moderator finally got that family member to talk a little about why she was doing what she was doing. And she actually said, when we were children, and I was a teenager, dad got you this car and he didn't get me one. And so I'm always going to take the things I want to kind of pay you back. That history, that unforgiving history, that sometimes can be like a wedge planted in someone's heart that doesn't allow for it to grow properly. Those things exist in a family business. I was talking to a family once, and they were talking about some of the things they were planning for their business. And this family, they had 2 children, and as they were thinking about who should take over the business, it made all the sense in the world that the one son should take over the business, because he had worked in the business, and he had moved back to close to be with mom and dad, and had done all the things necessary to manage the business. Yet he had another sibling, and the other sibling said, "I'm not comfortable with that." And they talked about it, and when they kind of continued to ask why, the root cause of why the other sibling wasn't comfortable was when so and so was older, and when we were at home and we were children, he was mean, and his friends would fight with my friends, and he would beat me up, and this sense of, maybe he hasn't grown, maybe he would still do that, maybe he would abuse his power. This emotional sense was still there, after literally decades of growing and living apart and going to college, it was still there. And so that emotion is so real in a family business. Here's another example of how that could play itself out. And there's a family who their dad had passed, and they were really good friends with dad, really good friends with each other before dad had passed. But once dad had passed, one brother wanted to take this family. They were from the islands of Jamaica. One brother wanted to take the business and really expand and be more entrepreneurial. The other brother, he wanted to take the business not in that direction at all. He said, "Man, dad just passed. Mom is still grieving. Our sister, who is financially independent, she really is kind of not caring because it doesn't really affect her. I don't want to do that with the business." And so there was tensions. They could have chosen to alleviate the tensions by problem solving, trust building, or they could have chosen to mobilize and have allies. The brother who didn't want to do much with the business could have gone and talked to mom and said, "Hey, mom, do you know what this brother wants to do with the business? Oh man, don't do that. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I want things to kind of stay the same for a long time. We just lost your dad." The other brother could have gone to the other sister and said, "Hey, do you know what the other brother? He doesn't want to move forward. He doesn't want to progress." At that point, there's more tension. They could choose peace, or they could get in trenches and fight in trench warfare over Thanksgiving dinner, as it might be, or over Christmas, or over whatever the holidays. There's always a dig about so and so not doing this or so and so not doing that. And at some point, if they don't have this either separation and mediation, they could get to this kamikaze warfare, where the point is not about growing the business anymore or keeping the business the same. The point is just, hey, how can I hurt you? And that's actually what happened to this business. They mobilized the allies amongst the family. They went through the trench warfare, engaged in kamikaze warfare, bankrupt the company, and broke it up. And when the one brother who, as he was sharing the story, he talked about how his brother was his best friend, but because of the emotional attachment, not the logical, not the meritocracy that most businesses are built on, but the emotional attachment of, I want to win. I need to beat this brother who used to be considered smarter, handsomer, more athletic. I need to win. That's what caused them to break up. And as he kind of shared the story, he kind of thought about how he actually hadn't interact with his brother since the breakup. They communicated through lawyers, and that was it. So sad and tragic. And so it's really important to consider all these things as you recognize that a family business is different than a typical business. Now that I've shared those things with you, I'd like to ask you to consider to have a conversation within your family business that might help you to avoid some of those things. And as you think about what to say, I want to share some thoughts with you to consider as you think about the conversation you could have. The first thing I want you to consider is that talent changes over a generation. You probably are familiar with this number. I understand basketball is really popular in the Philippines, and probably familiar with this person who is considered by many, including myself, the GOAT, the greatest of all times. And I think it's important to recognize, however, that he has two sons that play basketball. One's Jeffrey, the other's Marcus, and you may have never heard of them. I'll ask you why. The simple answer is, talent's different between dad and sons, or between mom and daughter, or between mom and sons, or between dad and daughter. And so it's really important that you recognize, as you prepare for this conversation, that the talent might be different. Um, the other thing that I think is really important for you to recognize, is that the interest might be different. So here's a picture of Bill Marriott and Arnie Sorensen. Who could have been in this picture is David Marriott. um, uh, Bill Marriott is the second generation owner of Marriott Hotels, and he took what his father had and took it to a different level. And his son David worked in the business for 30 years, 3 decades. Um, and Bill, I remember reading this in an article in the Harvard Business Review, where he talked about choosing a non-Marriott to be his successor. And that was hard for him. And that's not what he wanted. It's not what he wanted. But over time, he recognized that that was best. And it wasn't because his son wasn't talented. It wasn't because his son didn't know the business. His son actually ran their U.S. business. He'd worked in the hotels. He kind of lived in the business from the ground up and worked through it. He knew the business, but his heart wasn't in it. Not not like that. And what I mean by that is he didn't want to be tied to a desk all the rest of his life. Um, the article talks about how he is more entrepreneurial, and so for him, he'd much rather go and start a group of hotels that are smaller, that are more for the vacation owner, and that's actually what he's done. He's still the vice chairman of the board, just like Bill Marriott is the chairman of the board. But he is involved in the business, but he's not the face of the business, and he's not in the day to day of the business. And so it's really important to recognize that you can consider that as you think about these conversations. I actually work with farmers, and interact with farmers both here in this area where I live, which is Idaho, as well as farmers that I work with in Utah, and they have relatives and children who have a family council. On the family council, these family members have a voice. They still have ownership rights. They still have a say in the business, but they're not in the day to day. They're not day in day out on the farm. And so that's something you can consider as you think about what to do. At the end of the article, Bill Marriott Brother Marriott talks about how he was having a conversation with his son, and he said, his son said, "Hey, how are things going, Dad?" And he said, "Hey, I just got through with like 8 to 10 hours worth of meetings." And his son just chuckled and said, "Oh man, I'm so glad that's not me." So recognizing that interests might change over generation is critical, and that's okay. And it's okay to potentially help in another way. I'll give you one more example about this. In our family, my family still owns some property, and even though my sister and I we don't live where the property is. When there's a decision to be made about the property, whether it's to refinance the property or to work with renters or to sell the property, we're heavily involved. And so even though we have our own lives, our own jobs, work doing other things, owned other entities and businesses, and been involved in other things like that, we can still be involved even though we're not in the day in, day out of the business. One more that I'd like to share with you, one more story, and then I'd like to give you a couple of parables to consider. Know that efforts might change over generations. Now, this is a picture of the Stu Leonard family. You have the Leonards from left to right. You have Beth, then you have Marianne, and then Stu Sr., and then Jill, and then Stu's two sons, Tom and Stu Jr. Stu Leonard's it's kind of like a Whole Foods, if you will. Before Whole Foods was cool, I think. It was at one time listed on Inc. magazine's list for top 50, one of the top 53 companies to work for, and has quite the backing here in the U.S. in the East. Anyway, Stu started the business with one store. Initially started with their farm and their ranches and cows, and needed a way to kind of get that out the door. And so Stu Leonard was born in order to do that. There's a story that they've told that they are really public about and that published some information on about how one day they wanted, to help their kids to be successful. They wanted them to go to school and do well. And they were really disappointed to hear that Tom one day decided to drop out of school. And he came and talked to them about working in the family business. They said, "Sure, son, you can work with us." And so they gave him a role. And he worked for a little while. And one day, it was like a Easter weekend or some busy holiday like that. His friends called from school and said, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" He's like, "I'm working." He said, "Hey, we're going to the beach. You want to come?" And he's like, "No, I can't." They kind of persuaded him. I don't know what they said. Maybe they said something like, "Hey, isn't your name on the door? Aren't you like one of the owners?" And maybe he said, "Yeah, I am." And so, needless to say, he left and didn't go to work that weekend. And so he comes back and his dad calls him in, and he says to come visit with him. And the story that how it was shared with me is that he had a hot tub at the house, and he told him to bring his swimsuit, and so he did. And Tom actually said, I thought they missed me so much, maybe they were going to give me a raise. But he gets there, and he's talking to his dad, and they're talking about different things. And the dad brings up, "Hey, I understand that you missed your shift over this past weekend." And he's like, "Yeah, Dad, my friends, they want to do some things, and I thought it'd be fun to do that with them, so I went and did that." And Stu had two hats with him, and he took out one hat, and he put it on. He said, "Son, as an owner of a business, I wear lots of hats. One hat, I have to be a responsible person who cares about our customers, who cares about our employees, who cares about making sure that we take care of them and do the work on time. And you left your role at a critical time and left your team at a critical time. So as the CEO of the company, son, you're fired." And then he took that hat off and had another hat on. He put that hat on. He said, "Yeah, and now this is my dad hat. Dad, and as a dad, son, I just understand you lost your job. How can I help?" Uh, and so this wearing of the hats, remember the hats. Remember kind of what I said earlier about how it's sometimes hard to differentiate between, am I talking to dad now? Am I talking to son now? Am I talking to employee now? Most family businesses go through a phase or phases of development. And there is a phase called the professionalization phase. where things are not just done by the members of the family. You bring in more professional help to do the books, to manage inventory, to do your marketing or your sales. And as you professionalize the business, it's easier to delineate between whether you are a family member or whether you are and talking about family things or whether you're talking about the business. Some families, they actually they will have a policy that, here at the office, you don't call me dad, you call me this name, but at home you can call me dad. At home we don't talk about business, and if we do need to talk about business, let's go to a place where we've designated is the business place to have a conversation. But they really try hard to delineate so that it's really clear, and it's not focused on the emotion. It's not, I made this decision because ruined your mom's birthday the other day or 2 years ago. No, it's really, really clear as to why we made the decision. And so understanding those hats and those roles is really critical. The last thing I'll share with you in terms of stories is that timing matters. And so I'll say that it's really important that you set out what the time of the things that you do. It's important that you kind of set those things up ahead of time. And what I mean by that is I'll give you these really quick stories here. The first one is the parable of the nephew. And this is a true story. A nephew comes to an uncle who bought a family business and says to him, "Hey, uncle, I just dropped out of school, and I thought, man, I don't have much going on, but I remember Grandpa started a business. Can I come work for you?" And the uncle was wise enough that before this had ever happened, like years before, as he was kind of buying the business, he got together with all of the children and their parents, and they set up a family constitution, and they talked about what is the requirements for someone to work as an employee of the business if they're a member of the family. And on that it said, hey, they have to have graduated from school or served in the military. They've had to show progress in their success and moving up in their positions. There needs to be an actual role for them. We're not just going to create a role, and other things like that. He took that out. Everyone had signed it. Grandma had signed it. His parents had signed it. All the other nieces and uncles and aunts had signed it. He said to him, "Hey, come see me. Come talk to me." Came talk to him. He said, "You know what? That's really hard. I want to help you be successful as much as possible. Before we talk more about you working for us, here's our family constitution about how someone works in our business. Go read that, and when you're done with it and you want to talk to me, just come back." The nephew, he self-selected out, and it wasn't personal. He didn't think, "Oh man, you don't like me." It wasn't about, and it didn't interfere with Christmas or holidays or anything like that. It wasn't, his mom or dad calling and saying, "Hey, why didn't you hire my son?" None of that happened because of the timing of when they did that. Another example is this parable of the fiance. Now, imagine if you had your child come to you and say, "Hey, I'm engaged," and whether it's it's a groom or a bride, you say to them, "Oh, can you have that person sign this prenuptial agreement?" That might automatically get that relationship off on the wrong foot with that family. And it might automatically have them think that you don't trust him or her. That could be one approach. Can you imagine how different it might be if, as you got engaged or that person got engaged, they said to the person, "Hey, I want to ask you to marry me. Before I do, I want to let you know this, that in our family, we have this family constitution. where we've written out some things because we have a family business. And in that family business, these are some things that everyone that's married into the family have agreed to. I just want to make sure you're aware of this. This happened well before we ever even met. So it's really not about us. It's happened for a long time. My siblings, their wives have kind of thought, or their husbands have also understand these things, and it was shared to them. And we've said that whenever we decide to get engaged, before we officially get engaged, we make sure we share that. What kind of reaction would that have versus the first example? The timing matters. And so I invite you to think about these things now. The wrong time to think about these things is when you're going through emotional stress, when someone has passed away. Uh, it's hard to do these things when someone has just passed away, or even after. There's no way to say mom or dad would have wanted this because mom or dad are no longer here. Um, so the timing matters. Um, in closing, I'll on this, I'll just share. Here are some points of concern that are common, and the things that oftentimes when you're developing this family charter or family constitution that you definitely want to address. Here are some other things that are common. And as you address these things, the document itself is kind of an artifact of the conversation and the agreement. It's the conversation and the agreement that actually is the most important part. Finally, I just want to tell you there are resources for you. Um, Here are some of the resources that you can take advantage of. So there's articles and literature on these topics. There are workshops that you can attend. There's some university programs that you can go to. You can have phone conversations to consultants or others who advise along these lines, and that could be face to face or phone. Uh, Here are some of your next steps. You should ask yourself, um, you know, what specifically am I doing to set up us to be successful and to maintain our family and to maintain the future? Um, you should consider that there are different retirement styles, whether it's the monarch who would like to just die in power, whether you're going to be the general who retires but return when there's a sign of trouble, the ambassador that kind of negotiates a really clean transition, or a governor who says, "Hey, here are the keys to the mansion. I'm out of power. Good luck." Um, you need to determine what is your retirement style, or you need to have a conversation with whomever's retiring, so that everyone knows, and so that you're on the same page, so that there can be some clear expectations. Um, Here are some sticking points between the first and second generation that are very common. And so I'd invite you to work through these sticking points, whether it's the vision, or how do you make decisions, and how do we pass control? What does compensation look like? How do I get in and out of the business? Remember that as you're generous, it builds trust, and as you are secret and have secrecy, it destroys trust. You might want to evaluate and think about do an assessment of potential leaders of the business. Look at integrity, their relationship and leadership skills, their credibility with the family and with partners and with others and in your field. Do they have the skill set? Do they have the passion? Do they have the talent? You might want to develop a business charter that looks at some of those things I've outlined. So those are some things you can do. I hope that was helpful. I'll stop now and take some questions.
Thank you so much, Mark. Wow, that was really that was a wonderful webinar, and I'm looking at the list of our participants on Zoom, and I'm happy that we have a lot of them who I know have children already that they're honing, and I know that we have a lot tons on Facebook right now, and so I would like to remind everyone, if you have questions, please do type them down. But I do have few things we can start to talk about, Mark. First of all, again, thank you so much. This has really been very, very informative. Um, Mark, you mentioned about this is really something um, close to the heart of Filipinos as an issue. A lot of Filipinos, when no one from their kids would like to take over the business, somehow feels either offended. There's that feeling that how come no one wants to take on the business. Another feeling that comes to a lot of Filipino parents are they think they're a failure when no one wants to take over and no one wants to be part of the business. And I like what you have shared about Michael Jordan realizing that talents change in generation and all that. But well, does this happen also often to the people that you work with? That and you mentioned about Bill Marriott. So this is typical. I mean, it happens to businesses. It's not always that someone wants to be part of it, and it's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I would say that it's really so with our children. I love business. It's something I think about, I dream about. It's a passion of mine. Um, but I have kids that have different interests,
Mm,
and I want them to be successful with their dreams and not mine.
mm,
And that's really important that I recognize. Now that doesn't mean that they can't help maintain our dream, particularly if it's something that potentially could benefit them or create a legacy or something like that in the future. Um, and I many people will allow either they'll go against that advice from Warren Buffett, or they'll let the kids buy into whatever, and from that they will allow them to manage if they don't want to be in the day in day out. You don't have to be. Um, what you do need control, and in order to be control over business, you need to be in control of the finances, and you need to be able to hire and fire people. And that assumes that there is enough talent and the business is not so unique that only one person knows how to do it. Like, for example, if I have a restaurant, or if I have a retail company, or if I have a gas station, or if I have a, some place that I might do construction. There are a lot of people who are very capable, who act as employees, that estimate, that can run, and that you can actually partner with them and maybe even give them a share of the profit, so that your interests are aligned. Because you do want to make sure that your interests are aligned. But they don't have to actually be in the business.
mm,
You know, a lot of we see this a lot with the farmers. There are a lot of people who grew up early in the morning working the farm, and they're or milking cows. And they're like, I'm done,
mm.
and they frankly can potentially make a lot more money. Maybe they can't, but you'll be a lot more successful with whatever you do if you have a passion for it.
Here's a reverse. Here's a reverse. This is really interesting. Again, observation from our Filipino friends here, all of us. So there's that one extreme side where they get really offended. Nobody's taking care of the business and all that. Now here's another side, and I've seen this in my grandfather, actually mother's side. My grandfather built a business, and he went through so much hard work building that, and he made the promise to himself that he doesn't want his kids, any of his kids, to go through the trouble. And so instead of encouraging them to be part of the business, he encouraged them to be professionals.
Yeah. So that
So this
that's
is the
actually my
reverse.
situation. situation.
Okay.
And and that's, you know, as I said, my grandfather died doing the work that my dad did all of his life, and that I, you know, went on the truck with him doing, but he didn't want me to do it. And
Mm,
you know, I think part of what we have to recognize is, in capitalistic societies, there's such thing as property rights,
mm,
and it's important that the next generation recognize that, you know, whatever you receive from mom and dad is a gift. They don't
mm,
have to do it. That's the truth. I mean, good. You know, we're taught to be good parents, to provide for our children and to make sure that their needs are met and some of their wants. But there are, I mean, the world is full of parents who don't do that,
mm,
who don't provide for needs or wants.
mm,
All of it is a gift. And the expectation that the business is anything other than whoever created it is a false one. It's whoever created it legally, and they can do with it whatever they want. And there shouldn't be an expectation that they have to do something with it that benefits their future generations, or anything like that. And frankly, there shouldn't be this expectation of, oh, if you don't, you're a bad person, or
mm,
something
mm,
like to that, because it is theirs and they built it. Now they oftentimes they're super generous still. I mean,
mm,
they're generous with their time, their energy, their resource, their money. There are lots of perks associated with it.
mhm,
But that doesn't mean that they are going to give it to you. And I think it's interesting that, you know, both Warren Buffett and Bill Gates have said, the billions of dollars we created, we're not giving to our children, we're giving them to other people and charity and
mhm,
society and the world, and
mhm,
these foundations. Um, and so, even though they are not, you know, fully just kind of kicking them out to the curb,
mhm.
they're not leaving them in a way that it might be detrimental to them forever.
Right. So Mark, let me summarize this. And so you're saying that if some of your kids don't want to, be part of the business physically, that's perfectly fine. But they can still be part of the business. Maybe not on the day to day. They have a share. They have a certain percentage, because those who work in the business as family members, of course, we know they're also paid salaries and all that. So
Mhm.
and so they get more because they do that. But okay, and I'm also hearing from you that family business is a decision. It's just one decision that you can make. If somebody says, you know what, I built this up really big, but I'm gonna sell this. This is not gonna be passed on to my kids. That's another option.
I think the key is just communicating, and being really open, candid, and honest as to what you want and why from
Mm,
both sides.
mhm,
We see destructive behavior when people are put in a trap, or
mm,
not, or they feel trapped, I should say.
mhm,
When people feel like they're facing jumping off a cliff, they do very destructive things. And
mm,
so, you know, I've seen, you know, families where mom sues dad, or dad sues child, or child sues parent, or they sue brother. A lot of that happens because there's a sense of, man, I feel like I'm about to jump off a cliff. Some of that, frankly, is oftentimes the parents' own fault. Like, for example, I'm thinking of the the father paid for everything for a long time,
mhm,
but there's a brother who worked in the business and another brother who didn't. Um, and the brother who worked in the business, once father passed away, got everything because he
mhm,
worked in the business. And he said to the brother, "Hey, I'm not doing that anymore."
mhm,
And now the other brother's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how to work. I'm that chicken who didn't develop and grow." what am I going to do? How am I going to live? How am I going to support myself or maintain my current lifestyle? And in those situations, people do some pretty dramatic
Mm,
things, sometimes even illegal things,
mm,
sometimes, tragic things. So, trying to think it through and be really clear and set people up to be successful, but also not doing things that are gonna, disable them and maybe even permanently
mhm.
cause them to be unable to earn for themselves is important.
Right. And also, Mark, I think is it a good idea? Say, for example, like one child is not interested about the business, but is interested with another type of business, and is that a great option that the father allows this child to start that business, and that becomes like a holding family business, still part of the
Yeah,
family business.
yeah. A lot of times, families will do that, particularly when siblings can't work together. And they
Mm,
can't.
mm,
So it's much better instead of saying, "Hey, I'm gonna put you in the same business and make you work together." No,
mm,
let them. It could be, you work in this region or you work in this region, but you both have
mm,
autonomy, or
mhm,
you have your own different type of complete business, or
mhm,
be completely, there's no holding company at all, just be a completely separate
mm,
entity. All those are options. What's and that's fine. It's fine to recognize, where your family is. It's fine to recognize that, man, we have a hard time working together. It doesn't mean you're bad or I'm bad. It just means that we do. It's reality. Let's work in a way to set us up to be successful. That's important.
I like that a lot, and this is really wonderful that our Filipino friends are hearing this one, because again, it's like that. There's only one or only two tracks for a family business. So
Lots of
you're
options.
teaching us that there could be a lot. There could be a lot. You just be creative, think of ways to keep the family together and keep those interests running, and so there could be a lot. There's just not just one option for this one. Um,
Yeah.
Here's a follow-up question, Mark. I'm gonna ask a little bit about the family constitution, but you also mentioned about in-laws, and a lot of our graduates actually now have their kids, marrying and all that, and you mentioned that in the family constitution, this has really be cleared out. But what are some of the ways to approach the in-law issue? Um, is it right that some of them would probably say on the constitution, family constitution, that our decision is in-laws cannot be apart, or do we say in-laws can be? So what are some options? There are great options for when in-laws start to come in.
Both of those are options, but I would say that if you currently have in-laws, you should really think hard, long, what that might do to the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in general, I think it should be focused on a policy of fairness, and that may mean that if the person is qualified, and if there's clear ways for the person to be evaluated, maybe it's by an outside board, maybe even you don't, when it comes to a family member, you say, hey, if it's a family member, we don't do the hiring. Or if it's an in-law, we don't do the hiring. We're going to let someone else do the hiring for that, so that, I didn't hire my sister-in-law and she's mad at me. And that way you can set up the system so that it's not personal. It's just trying to make the best decision. Um, and if that's what you're seeking, then I would set up a system that would allow for some separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So again, there are tons of options when it comes to the issue of in-laws. I heard family businesses would say, in our family constitution, we hire in-laws, son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, whatever, but they cannot have voting rights. So
Yep.
that's one option.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There's
Or
tons of them.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it might be, you might say, hey, in order to be the owner or the CEO or whomever, you actually have to be a descendant or a bloodline relative.
Mm.
Who gets to decide is who's the owner of the business ultimately. And so, if that's mom and dad, then they get to make the final decisions. But the conversation is important. And so having the conversation and allowing those in-laws to know that this is what we're thinking and letting them kind of say, oh yeah, that's fine with me, or no, I don't feel
Mm.
good about that. Really allows for you to not just run all over everyone and just get,
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, someone could go in a room and lock the door and just kind of write the Constitution, but it's not that makes it helpful and binding. It's the conversation and the discussion
Mm.
and
Mm.
why are you doing this, or is it about this, or is it because you don't like me, or man, when we were
Mm.
dating you said some
Mm.
things I still or rub me the wrong way. Is that why you're doing it? So
Mm.
it's that that allows for constructive discussion that hopefully will get to a good resolve. What I would also caution against, going through every potential skeleton that you have in your closet. I would try to keep the issue focused on the issues at hand. There are some really good principles around objectifying people versus looking at people as people and understanding
Mm.
their needs, desires, and trying to not just say, oh, I don't care about you or how you're feeling, and to use those as good guiding principles.
Yeah. So all of this, Mark, appears on the family constitution, and again, this is not very familiar for Filipinos, but this is a very powerful and important tool.
It
Uh,
is. So it is. I would say there are lots of tools that you can use, but having this kind of charter or constitution really allows for you to kind of set a
Mhm.
course and have a common way to communicate. Even things like how can we talk to each other,
Mm.
or like there's an example of, when you get mad, we're going to take a timeout, and the timeout will last X, Y, and Z time, and then everyone else comes back together, and or when so and so has this thing, they have the floor and they can't be interrupted. So
Mm.
just to make sure that we're clear on these are the rules of engagement,
Mhm.
because a family business is very different. It's different
Mhm.
than a normal
Right.
business. So I think that the other thing that I think is really important is a board, and so
Mm.
having a board of director allows for continuity in the family, and allows for accountability in the family, and allows for the family to really focus on the right things.
Right. Yeah, I have another question. I have a question for the board in a while. But so, when is the best time to write a family constitution, Mark? When the kids are still young, or when they're already involved, so that they can be part of the construction of the family constitution? When should that document start to really form up?
Recognize, just like your constitution for your government, our constitution for our government, it's a living, breathing thing, right? And so I'd say you start it now, and then over time, it can adjust and change and grow. But you document that. You document, and it allows for someone to say, "Hey, I was reading this the other day," and or someone might say, "Dad, or Mom, how can I work in the business, or how can I get ownership?" And you're like, well, this is kind of what we outlined. Oh, that sounds right, or no, that doesn't, or I've been working a lot in the business. What does sweat equity look like? Or is there some way for me to get some education, or is there a seed fund for me to start my own thing? And how much equity with the if I did that, is there a way for me to kind of take it before the business and get approved? So these are some questions that you could vet out,
Yeah.
around education, around ownership rights, around using perks and family resources.
Hmm.
All Many of those things you can kind of focus on,
Yeah.
and it will evolve over time as you would write some policy, of course, around marriage and those types of things, or working in or outside of the business, ownership rights, etc.
Right. Wow. Before I read a question that was sent by one of our participants, so with regards to the board, Mark, is there like technically or spiritually speaking two boards? One is the business board and one is the family board, because some members of the family are not part of the business board. So how does that work?
Yeah, so there for sure is oftentimes these levels, and one might be the board of directors for the business, and then there might be a family council,
Mm,
and those work interchangeably.
mm,
Those might be different people. For example, on the board of the business, you might have your lawyer, your accountant, you might have some an advisor or two. It might be a manager that you really trust. But then there's the family council,
mm.
and that is a different body. And in that, you could set rules for the board, and the board would report and could report to the family council about how resources are being used, the future, setting the strategic agenda, etc. And things can, the family might say, oh, well, we'd like to have the company, go in this direction or have this focus or vision. And that's an opportunity for them to have an exchange.
Yeah, and this is important. Again, this is practically very new to us Filipinos. Like, I think a lot of Filipinos are thinking, since we're all members of the family, we're all part of the business board, the board of directors. So you're saying, no, no, it could be two separate things, but there's always that family council right there. I mean, because even though two members of the family are not actively involved, they can be part of the family council, and that functions differently from this professional board of directors right there.
And the way they meet, like for example, the board of directors might meet monthly. And every month they're looking at the numbers, they're looking at sales, they're looking at marketing, they're looking at payout, cash flow, etc. The family council might meet semi-annually, or it might
Mm,
meet annually,
mm,
or it might meet quarterly. I mean, you get to set that, but it will allow for, hey, if I'm not involved in the business, I still can stay up to date on what's going
mm,
on with the
mm.
business.
Wow, that's wonderful. Now this is really, and somebody actually commented, this is eye opener, and then it is really, because a lot of times, since we're not really used to most of this, we're just thinking one track, but you're now giving us so many options to think about and to really come up with better ways to manage the family business. Here's a question from one of our audience, Mark.
Hmm.
What is the ideal time to plan one's retirement and passing of the ownership to the next generation?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, so I would say there's a story told about this. So in terms of setting expectations with your children, uh, 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 one day this young man was in college and he said, "Mom, come up to my room." And she came up to his room and she was like, "I'm not going in there." And he's like, "Mom, I'm a poor college student. This is my room. Can you come in?" It's like, "I'm not going in there. You need to talk to your dad." It's like, "Talk to dad." It's like, "Yeah, you have money." It's like, "No, I don't, Mom. I'm a poor college student. I don't." It's like, "No, you have money. You can do better than this. You need to talk to your dad." It's like, "What?" I mean, he was totally clueless. And so he calls his dad. It's like, "Hey, son, how you doing?" "Yeah, Mom, so weird. She wouldn't come in my room. I told her this is the best I can do. I mean, I got loans." And he's like, "Well, son, you actually have wealth." It's like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, you." He's like, "Really?" And and so he was like, I think in graduate school when that happened. And for him, that was too long.
Mm,
He felt not so much because he was like, "Oh man, I could have been living it up." He actually, when he found out, he's like, "Okay," and he bought an apartment. He got roommates to pay off the apartment, so he has building equity, and he got a bike, and nothing else changed. I mean, he didn't. So understanding at a point where you feel that your kids are actually established in who they are, I think is the
mm,
question,
mm,
for allowing them to have access to wealth, but even before that, I'd say, you know, it really is hard for parents to not spoil their children while spoiling themselves.
Mm.
Um, and so there are a lot of people who have really tried to do a lot to not live above and beyond, even though they have the means to, because they want their kids to be grounded
Mm.
and in a certain way. Not, now, I'm not saying if you do live above and beyond, you're bad or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying that that's a certain approach that people have tried so that the kids don't get used to a certain lifestyle.
Mhm.
And normally that's in the early 20s ish, when they might have more access, and that might be even phased in over time.
Mhm.
But oftentimes they you might say, hey, we are going to pay for school,
Mhm.
and that's it. Good
Mhm.
luck. Or we're gonna pay for half of school.
Mhm.
Or we're not gonna pay for any school. You're gonna have to figure it out, and that's okay too. All of those are very reasonable, and
Yeah.
we'll support you in other ways. We'll connect you with people, help you
Mhm.
get a good education. Help you, get grades so you can go to a good school, get scholarships, that kind of thing, get grants. But nope, you're gonna have to do it on your own. That's fine. As far as your retirement, to answer that question, um, one of the things we often talk to people about is being hit by a bus, and that bus could be a good bus. It could be you called on a mission. It could be that um, you have an opportunity to go and serve somewhere, or it could be a literal bus, right?
Mm.
So one of the things to think about is, and this is a good exercise, to go to your business
Mm.
and say, I just left for a mission or whatever.
Mm.
Um, I'm going to be silent. What would you do? And just have people talk. What would you do for the next 6 months? And just have them talk through that.
Mhm.
You kind of it's basically a fire drill to see how prepared your business is. And you can do those often to see where the holes are. And oh man, I need to tell. But for many people, for a business of some size, succession takes time. It takes
Mm.
a year or two, maybe five, to
Mhm.
if you really want to do it right, and you really wanted to kind of hand over things over time to
Mm.
make sure that all the things are in place.
Yeah.
But once you have that in place, then you're in a position where you can retire, and you get to determine your retirement style. So I list it for there.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I would just say, make sure whatever it is, you let people know so they know, okay, as soon as there's trouble, he's going to come across the horizon, and we're going to see a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
Or man, no, he's going to be in that chair, or she's going to be in that chair until she dies.
Yeah. And I really like that a lot. The four types that you mentioned, because um, a lot of parents feel that if they become really inactive, they're gonna die early, and so they want to continue to be part of the operation, or at least their minds are running. And
Yeah.
I heard somebody said, one of the best ways to do that is create a department for that exiting father or mother on the social side. Let them go and plant more trees and do this and do that. But because sometimes they cannot help but become actively part of it, and they come back again and again, and it confuses
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, it does. Very confusing, and you can see, like, for example, someone they ran the restaurant for so long, and then they're gone, and someone takes over. They change things. They change operation metrics,
Mm,
and so comes back. They change everything back the day they come back. It's
mm,
like, oh my
mm,
goodness, who do we
mm.
talk to? Who do we listen to? So it's really hard. I would say, you need to figure out what your retirement style is. Make
Right.
sure other people know, and as you look to really retire, if you really want to be out of the business, find something else to do. These businesses, they become your life. I mean, there's so much ingrained in you. You've dedicated so much time, energy, resources, sweat, blood, tears. So it's completely normal that you need to transition, and something needs to fill that void and space, or things won't go well. And so I would have a plan to do that. And I've interacted with people who've tried, as they've retired, they've taken on other roles, other jobs, church related, community related, family related, and they're of significance, and they've really enjoyed that.
Right, right. Thank you so much. Mark, one more, and then we'll wrap this up. I mentioned this to you, and I think it was also clearly discussed in your presentation. The thing about, and I think it's not just Filipinos. The saying that the first generation starts it, the second grows it, and then the third generation destroys or squanders the business. And I think you're also and you gave great quotes and insights from Warren Buffett that so are you recommending, and I think the reason for that is the first generation who starts a business, really, most of them starts poor, they're self-made millionaires. The second generation kind of witness that, they're also part of that growing phase and all. The third generation, they don't really know anything about poverty anymore. I mean, they already know that we're wealthy, we're rich. So how do you keep that? How do you keep that spirit of groundedness you were saying?
Yeah, I think the key is that story that I was telling you about the person who comes in with the at the end with the briefcase on,
Mm-hmm.
having them earn their way and earn their way in the business. You'll saying many people don't give it to their children. They say, okay, if you want to be in the business, this will be the sweat equity plan,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can pay the rest in cash. Because most of you, I mean, most people, their cash is tied up in their business anyway, and this is a way for them to actually own it. And so if they really want to earn it, great. Um, let's set up a way for you to earn it. Um, and and normally what that often looks like is we will have a valuation of the business. We'll get a value for it, and that value will be kind of based on some number. It might be assets, it might be land and inventory, it might be the book value, it might be include cash, and then we'll say, okay, for every year you work in the business, you'll get X% of the business as part of your earnings.
Mm-hmm.
um, and or you can go get a loan and pay me a big chunk of cash, and that can be a big down payment, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
hold your note, and as you work, I'll be your bank. You pay me as you work, and you can work off the business,
Wow.
and which is very, very, that's a common approach for someone, say, to own a dentistry business. And many
Mm-hmm.
many of those businesses aren't passed from daughter to father or father to son, or relatives. And so someone will come into a dentistry. They will go and get a loan. They'll pay the loan to the person, or they'll come and work, and the person who already owns the business will be a partner, and at some point they'll just continue to pay, and that person will be the bank, and they'll earn it. They'll earn
Mm-hmm.
it's theirs. They paid for it, and that
Wow.
that also allows you to say to any siblings, hey, do you want to help or do you want to not? But either way, just don't complain after. If it's wildly successful, don't complain after.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a bust, that's on me. Don't complain after. But it allows everyone to at least have a say, and maybe they say, oh yeah, I'll give you 10,000. I want a piece, or not.
I like that a lot. I like that a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, you saying that, you know, every member or every generation should there should be a sweat equity plan. I like that a lot. I mean, that gives them, you know, the proper right to be part of the business. It's not that just handed to them, but they also work for it, and that's going to give them a different sense of accomplishment as well.
Yeah,
Wow.
and in many cases, these people will have worked outside of the business also before they work in the business. So one of the like
Mhm.
I have often lots of students who are going to their family business, and I ask them to do an internship, and they say, "Oh, I'll do it at my family business." And I think, why would you ever want
Mm.
to do? You can always work there. Why don't you
Right.
go for a competitor or go work in the supply chain, in the value chain of your business? You know, if you guys are in construction, go work for one of the major suppliers for your business. Wouldn't that be better to come in and say, "Hey, I have these contacts"?
Mm.
Hopefully you're bringing value to the business, not just learning on the business on while you're in the business.
Oh, I like this a lot. I have really enjoyed this. You know, in one word for me, the inspiration that came to me, Mark, is options. There are so many options to make a family business work, and sometimes we're so limited with, you know, probably the tradition of the culture on how things are to be done. But just like what you're saying, and there's so much help out there, so much models out there to watch and to learn from, and to just make our basis. So I really thank you a lot, and a lot of our viewers. So Mark, before we finally end this one, I'd like to give you your final words, and then if you can stick for a while, we will promote as many on the Zoom platform, so you get to see them. All right, so you get to see who listened to you, and we'll have a quick photo shot. So your final words, Mark, and then we'll have our photo shot.
Final words. I'll end where I started. I feel like I'm extremely blessed, and hopefully you'll want to be in that category where of the quadrant where hearts are warm and pockets are deep. But ultimately, hearts are warmed because you've made good choices that you're comfortable with, and you're looking to not only do good things for yourself, but also to bless your community, your family, um, and as a believer that God would be pleased with you. And I think ultimately that really is the ultimate test. It is heaven smiling down. Um, I'm a fan of Clayton Christensen, who passed away recently, sadly, who was a mentor and such a great person. And in his book and some of his writings, he's talked about how management done right can be the greatest profession, because what other profession where you inspire, allow people to have a sense of accomplishment, allow them to accomplish a task. Oftentimes that's hard. Provide for them and their family, and grow and develop. And if we do it right, management can be the most grand profession. In that same article, he talked about how on how you measure your life. He talked about ultimately he thinks it's going to be based on how God will measure his life, but by how he touched others. And I hope that's also our goal. With that, good luck, and such a pleasure to be with you. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to interact with this such an awesome and wonderful program.
Mike, thank you so much. I hope that this is not the first and the last. I know that we will be needing your guidance and your wisdom as we continue to grow the Filipino family businesses, as we also continue to mature in what we're doing. So expect more invitations from us, Mark. We hope you don't mind that.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna start. If Reno can help me with promoting our guests as panelists, that would be great. We don't need to close with the prayer. We will have our um, So we're starting to promote them, Mark. So please, if you're promoted as panelists, please do turn on your video so Mark can see you and we can just say hi to him. And if you want to say hi to Mark, that would be great. This has been a wonderful, wonderful webinar. One of my personal favorites, actually. uh, so Mark, you're now seeing some of our participants.
Hello.
Yeah, guys, you can unmute and you can say hi to Mark. Go ahead while we are promoting
Hello.
our.
Hi.
Oh, there you go. Oh, Sanchez. Oh, this is great. This is great. Oh, kung meron kayong tanong, if you have questions to Mark right now, you still have few minutes, and then we have to let him go, and it's nighttime in their place.
Yeah, my wife.
Po, Sir James. Hello po, Sir Mark. Morning
Thank you.
po.
Oh, hi, Cecil. Thank you so much. Oh, this is really wonderful. Wow. Okay, here we go. So we will have a group photo. So please turn on your cameras, my friend, and we'll have maybe 2 shots because we have a lot of people on our screen here. All right, here we go. Smile. Okay, just keep smiling. Here we go. All right. Wow. Great to have Mark with us. What a wonderful speaker. Very, very inspiring. And I know that everybody is just learning a lot and taking down notes, making sure that the next generations are ready for the family business. Mark, thank you so much. This has really been a wonderful and productive morning.
Sure, you bet. Have a great November, great fast.
All right, we will. All righty, thank you so much, everyone. We will make announcements. Yeah, we will make announcements for the national conference and the EAA Entrepreneur Academy Awards awarding ceremony. So that's gonna happen 12, 13, 14 in the Philippines. Watch out for the poster, and let's all learn and have wonderful time together. All right. Enjoy your lunch is provided in your place.
Thank you po, sir. Thank you po sa inyong words of wisdom na na-share.
Yes, true words of wisdom from Mark. Mark, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Take
Bye.
care. My pleasure.
Bye. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Shay, wala na palang closing prayer.
Ikaw na rin.
Naka-silent ka, Shay.
Ay, po. Okay lang po.
Oh, wala na sabi ni Sir James, hindi na daw.
Maganda yung message.
Oo, magaling.
Okay lang. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.